काले कोठा गेला गोरा नटराज आशाने कुटिब माथा आनले पश्चिम गौरांगा गुनेरा निधि कथा गिले पावो सब संगीर संगे जे कैल बिला जिसे संग ना पाया कांदे नारोत्तमदास से संग ना पाया कांदे नारोत्तमदास Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Acarya Ashtotra Shatashishimad A.C. Bhakti Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Om Vishnupada Krishna Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Prevajaka Acarya Ashtotra Shatashishimad A.C. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Prem Se Karo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Govinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki Vrindavan Dham ki Mathura Dham ki Ganga Mai ki Yamuna Mai ki Tulasi Vide ki Bhakti Devi ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki. All glories to the Assembled Devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the Assembled Devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the Assembled Devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmitamena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadadi Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shiyata Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sagan Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivan Sadhuvitam Savaditam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagan Alida Shri Vishakhan Vitam Shahi Krishna Karunasini Dhiravanda Jagatvate Gopesha Gopika Kante Radha Kante Namasiti Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavani Sri Vishwavani Siti Devi Pranamami Hari Prevancha Kapadruvesha Kripa Sindhubhya Vachapatitanam Pavinibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Niti Namine Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jnananandamaయం Devam Nirmashpratikakritam Adaram Sarva Vidyanam Haigrimam Upasmahe Guru Vaishnava Bhagavan Tinir Smaranahoy Vigna Vinashan Anayashahay Nija Vanchita Puranam. So today is Sri Devananda Pandit's disappearance day. So speaking a little bit from this book and just kind of read through about the life of Sri Devananda Pandit, who is an associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Puranamartaveta Sri Devananda Pandita Purasinananda Parishad Pandita Bhandarair Munihi. The scholar Devananda Pandit knew the meaning of all the Puranas. Previously he was Bandhari Muni, the scholar in Nanda Maharaj's court. So this is from Ganadesha Deepika 106. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya father was named Maheshwara Viharada. Mahaprabhu visited the house which was situated on an embankment. Devananda Pandit, a peaceful Brahmin who desired liberation, made his home nearby. The Lord delivered Devananda Pandit in the town of Kulia. According to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, Kulia was a suburb of Navadvip situated on the west bank of the Ganga. In that time, the central part of the town of Navadvip was also known as Mayapur, was situated on the eastern bank of the river. The modern city of Navadvip stands on the site of the former Kulia, which is also known as the place where offences are forgiven. Aparadha Bhangjanir Patha. Proof of this is found in the old names of the many neighborhoods such as Kolarjang, Kolardha, and Gandhaki Kol. Each of the 9 islands of Navadvip Dham represents one of the 9 types of devotional services. Kola Dweep is the island of service to the Lord's lotus feet, Pada Sevana. The word Kola has been distorted in the popular speech as Kulia. Just look, this Visharadha's embankment. Here the Lord met Devananda Pandit and chastised him for the offense he committed to Srivas Pandit, causing him to repent. From the above evidence from Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Bhakti Ratnakar, it is clear that Devananda Pandit's house was somewhere near the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's father, Maheshwara Vishadhara. It is thus clearly indicated that his school was situated somewhere in Kulia village. Devananda's offense. Devananda Pandit was a scholar and an ascetic who had been indifferent to the world from an early age. Although he had won a reputation for his erudition, he nevertheless had no real feeling of devotion to Krishna, and so failed to understand the bhakti was ultimate purport of Srimad Bhagavatam. Being a mumukshu, or one who seeks impersonal liberation, moksha, Devananda Pandit praised dry austerities and renunciation in his discourse on the Bhagavatam and did not glorify devotional service. One day, Srivas Pandit came to hear a Bhagavatam recital at Devananda's house. As he listened to the text of the Bhagavatam, Srivas Pandit became absorbed in the mood of loving devotion and started to cry. Devananda Pandit's faithless disciples threw him out of the assembly for causing a disturbance. Since Devananda did not object to the actions of his students, he was responsible for their offense to a devotee. Mahaprabhu was thus angry with him. The Lord said, "Whoever recites the Bhagavatam without glorifying devotion service is an ignorant fool who knows nothing. This rascal recites the Bhagavatam and never mentioned bhakti. I will go and tear up his manuscript. Just watch me." Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur comments on this verse as follows. When those bereft of devotion forget their actual identity, they become completely indifferent to the service of the Lord. When they identify this indifference as the ultimate goal of life, they become a source of proud irritation to the Lord, even though He is by nature supremely merciful. Here, Lord Gaura Sundar shows His irritation and informs us that this attitude of the non-devotee is not only unnecessary, but reprehensible. He also indicates that both the acts of enjoying and renouncing the fruits of material actions are improper. The devotees find great satisfaction in seeing the Lord become angry in this way. Devananda gains faith in the Lord. So, sometime after Devananda Pandit committed his offense to Srivas Pandit, Mahaprabhu passed nearby his house and saw that he was engaged in giving a discourse on the Bhagavatam. He became angry and rebuked him severely for his lack of faith in the Vaishnavas. Just as blasphemy of the devotees is the best way to be deprived of the Lord's mercy and destined for downfall, glorifying them and engaging in their service is the best way to find the mercy of the Lord and become freed from all sinful activities. Quote, "Listen, Brahmin, if you want to be cured after consuming poison, you must ingest ambrosia through the very same mouth you took the poison. In this way, not only will the poison be digested, but your body will become immortal through the ambrosia's divine power." Through great fortune, Mahaprabhu Vakreshwara Pandit came to stay at Devananda Pandit's house. Because Devananda took excellent care of Vakreshwara, Mahaprabhu softened towards him. Previously, Devananda had been completely without any faith in the Lord. But when he heard of Mahaprabhu's glories from Vakreshwara, his attitude changed. Through the association of the Lord's devotee, he began to develop a taste for pure devotional service. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in this regard, "For Devananda Pandit of Kulia, the fruit of service to the Vaishnavas was faith in Mahaprabhu's lotus feet. Vakreshwara Pandit's visit to his house was the source of his auspiciousness. Although Devananda was a smarta, he was a great scholar and self-controlled. He studied nothing but the Srimad Bhagavatam. He believed in God and had control of his senses. All he lacked was faith in Mahaprabhu. By the grace of Vakreshwara Pandit, this faulty intelligence was wiped away, and he became a believer in Lord Gaurachand Sundar. Devananda was a scholar of the Bhagavatam, but it was through Vakreshwara mercy that he was able to understand its meaning from Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu told Devananda to explain the Bhagavatam in terms of devotional service. It was Devananda Pandit's great fortune that he was able to receive the mercy of the Lord in the form of a chastisement. Devananda Pandit was a great pious soul, for Mahaprabhu verbally punished him. The chastisement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the greatest pious act. Even if one should die as a result of Lord's punishment, he still goes to Vaikuntha. Devananda received this mercy due to living in Kulia or Koladweep, the place where offenses are forgiven. Gopal Chapala was also forgiven his offenses in Kulia. Devananda Pandit's disappearance day is celebrated on the Krishna Ekadashi of the month of Pausha. Shri Devananda Pandit ki jai. Okay, so now we'll continue with the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's see, verse 3.6.3. Okay, let me bring it up here. Okay, Saha, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Saha Anupravishtaha Bhagavan Cheshtarupena Kali. Sorry, what's happening? Tam, sorry, Gunam, sorry, Ganam, Bhinnam samyojayan asa suptam karma prabodhayan sonurapvishto bhagavans cheshtarupena tam ganam bhinnam samyojayamasa suptam karma prabodhayan sonu pravishto bhagavans cheshtarupena tanganam bhinnam bhinnam samyojayamasa suptam karma prabodhayan sonu pravishto bhagavans cheshtarupena tam ganam bhinnam samyojayamasa suptam karma prabodhayan Matajis. Sanam Prashta Bhagavans Pena Tanganam Asa Saha, that Anupravishtaha, thus later Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Cheshtarupena, by his representation of attempt, Kali. Kali is not there? Yeah. Tam, them, Ganam, all the living entities, including the demigods. Bhinnam, separately. Samyojayam, asa, engaged to work. Suptam, sleeping. Karma, work. Prabodhayan, enlightening. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Translation. Thus, when the personality of Godhead entered into the elements by His energy, all the living entities were enlivened into different activities, just as one is engaged in his work after awakening from sleep. Purport. Every individual soul remains unconscious after the dissolution of the creation, and thus enters into the Lord with his material energy. These individual living entities are conditioned souls everlastingly, but in each and every material creation they are given a chance to liberate themselves and become free souls. They're all given a chance to take advantage of the Vedic wisdom and find out what is their relationship with the Supreme Lord, how they can be liberated, and what the ultimate profit is in such liberation. By properly studying the Vedas, one becomes conscious of his position and thus takes to the transcendental devotional service of the Lord and is gradually promoted to the spiritual sky. The individual soul in the material world individual souls in the material world engage in different activities according to their past unfinished desires. After the dissolution of a particular body, the individual soul forgets everything. But the all-merciful Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart as the witness, the supersoul, awakens him and reminds him of his past desires, and thus he begins to act accordingly in his next life. This unseen guidance is described as fate, and a sensible man can understand that this continues his material bondage in the three modes of material nature. The unconscious sleeping stage of the living entity just after the partial or total dissolution of creation is wrongly accepted as the final stage of life by some less intelligent philosophers. After the dissolution of the partial material body, a living entity remains unconscious for only a few months, and after the total dissolution of material creation, he remains unconscious for millions of years. But when the creation is again revived, he is awakened to his work by the Lord. The living entity is eternal, and the wakeful state of his consciousness, manifested by activities, is his natural condition of life. He cannot stop acting while awake, and thus he acts according to his diverse desires. When his desires are trained in the transcendental service of the Lord, his life becomes perfect, and he is promoted to the spiritual sky to enjoy eternal awakened life. I did that. Okay. Sorry. Habit. So, speaking on this particular subject matter here, of how the Lord enlivens the living entities into activities, into their past work, into performing work in this world or exhibiting their different desires. Srila Prabhupada in this purport specifically speaks about what the all Vedic literatures propagate or ultimately bring us to, Sambandha, Avideya, and Prayojan Tattvagyan. So all these things are particularly hammered upon by Srila Prabhupada, that all of this is done in order to bring about these realizations of what's one's position, what's one's, how to act in relation to the Lord, and actually getting those results of devotional service, attaining love of Godhead. Particularly Srila Prabhupada makes that point here. And Srila Prabhupada goes on to make the point that the living entity awakens after his sleeping, and the Lord reminds him of his past desires, and such is considered fate by the materialist or such and such. So here, particularly making the point that the Lord, he is the prime factor of any movement in this world. He is the super soul that makes everything happen. Often we make this point, which is obviously true, that the soul is what powers the body. But actually also the super soul is who is powering everything. That without the super soul or without Vishnu, there's no question of movement at all. There's no question of the jivas actually being able to act out their karma, their activities in this world. Because we see that without Vishnu entering into this material world, without entering into this material energy, as it is particularly stated, enters into the Lord with his material energy. Without Kshidakshayi Vishnu entering into each and every atom and every living entity's heart, there's no question of the living entities being able to act at all. So just as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Buddhi Buddhimatam Asmi, Balavatam Chaham, that I'm the strength of the strong, that I'm the intellect of the intelligence of the intellectuals. So as Krishna says that, similarly he is the Bhumirapo Nalo Vayu Kamano Buddhir Evacha. By him all these things are manifested, and without these things becoming manifested, there's no question of the jiva being able to act in this world. Without a mind and intelligence and the false ego, the living entity stays in a stagnant position like that of the sleeping condition, as is being described here, that after creation, after dissolution, the living entity enters back into Mahavishnu, in which his condition is of just sleeping. There's no activity going on, which Srila Prabhupada specifically mentions as a unnatural state of the living being, because actually the living being is full of variety, wants enjoyment in different ways, that naturally pleasure-seeking beings the jiva is. Because it is the Krishna is also, because it ultimately that nature is coming from Krishna. So this stagnant position, which some have described, just like Devananda Pandit's philosophy was also that, of that actually ultimately you are meant to be in this just void, like the impersonalists may say. It doesn't seem like that he was particularly Mayavad, because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentions that he believed in God. So it seems like more of an impersonalist in that sense, in the acting out the pastimes of being an impersonalist. So the philosophy of the impersonalist is of as such that the ultimate destination of the living entity is that it is in a stagnant position of which there is no movement. Everything is one, you could say. And that is the ultimate position. But that's not particularly the purport of the Vedas. That the living entity by nature is full of activity, because as soon as he awakes from that consciousness, he's ready to engage in the activity. Specifically making the point here that the Lord sanctions that, just as the super soul within the heart, he allows the living entity to remember all of the or allows him to function within this world according to the desires that he has had for many lifetimes. So even after that state of sleep, karma goes on. That state of dissolution with this entire material cosmos, then one enters back into Mahavishnu, and then when it is manifest again, the same desires are there. It's not that those desires are removed at any point. That some of the Buddhists will preach that when you attain the state of nothingness, what they can say, or whatever, oneness, that there's no more desire. But it's just that desire is not able to actually be acted out, because there's no mind, intellect, and ego, or the material body to act, because it's all been retracted. But when that is available again, the living entity immediately acts according to the past desires that he had. So it shows that the desire of the living entity cannot be killed, because it's not separable. The living entity and desire are not two separate things. They are one in the sense that they exist together, because the living entity by nature is full of desire. So the Mayavadis falsely make the claim, or the Buddhists, the Shunyavadis, make the claim that ultimate position is that of nothingness or oneness. But we can see that it doesn't have to come to that point of dissolution to understand that. We can see in their own lives that they become frustrated by their inability to enjoy variety, that they say everything is one, but they can never actually practically act that out. So they often, as Srila Prabhupada describes, or in many other places is described, that they may perform such work and have such philosophy, but at the end of it, it turns into hedonistic enjoyment. It's just like they just go and try to enjoy their senses at the end of it, actually. You see that a lot with the Buddhists, that they have such philosophies, we're all one and everything is nothing and such. The Buddhists have the Shunyavad philosophy, but a lot of them end up, you see them at the airport, those who distribute books at the airport, you'll see them smoking cigarettes and they were eating meat and such. Because actually the living entity wants to enjoy. It wants to enjoy. Otherwise you're a Buddhist, why are you smoking a cigarette? Why are you smoking a cigarette? What is the need? It's nothing anyways. Why are you trying to get enjoyment in this world? They say, okay, the world is false, everything is nothing. So why are you trying to get enjoyment? Similar to the Mayavadis. So the philosophy of such people, they are faulty, because they are unable to understand Sambandha Tattva Gyan. They're not able to understand what is the actual existence of the soul, or what is our existence actually, what is our proper position within this world. So therefore the Vedas, although the Mayavadis somewhat fall under the Vedic tradition, you could say, they don't particularly follow the Vedas in that sense of that they're taking the true meaning of Veda. They construe some meaning or make some meaning by which you get the end result is this oneness. But actually one who's properly studying the Vedas, as Srila Prabhupada says here, becomes conscious of his position and thus takes to the transcendental devotional service of the Lord and is gradually promoted to the spiritual sky. So, as all Vedas, that's the goal of the Veda, Sambandha Tattva Gyan, to speak about one's existence, prayojan, one's ultimate attainment, Sambandha, Avideya, how to act in that relationship. That is completely missed by the Mayavadis, because all of those things, it's all one anyways. So what is the point of understanding one's position, in the sense that, well, we are just all one, and so the goal, there is no real goal. Everything is just one, just to become one. So similarly, the Buddhists are also like that. So when one actually starts to take to the real meaning and real study of the Veda, he starts to understand one's real position in relation to the Lord. And that is the reason the Vedas are becoming manifest. Along with so many of these other unfinished desires, the Lord tries to help the living entity fulfill. So the living entity engages in these activities, different activities in this world, to try to understand his position, ultimately. And they try to take the position of becoming the enjoyer within this world, which is obviously a false position. Nonetheless, the super soul within the heart reminds or facilitates the fulfillment of those desires. Just like if one has the desire to have a lot of sex at the end of one's life, the Lord, the super soul within the heart, allows him to fulfill that desire by becoming a monkey or a pigeon, whichever one facilitates that desire accordingly. What you deserve and what you desire. So the Supreme Lord within the heart is acting, as Prabhupada says here, as the witness, awakening him and reminds him of his past desires, and allows the living entity to act. But most, and Srila Prabhupada says here, most just consider that to be fate, but not many can actually understand how the living entity is completely dependent on the Supreme Lord to even act, although they may act against him or defy him or say that he does not exist within this world. The very fact that he's even thinking like that is coming from the Lord himself. The very fact that we can act within this Lord is the mercy of the Lord. The very fact that we can think is the mercy of the Lord, but one cannot recognize it being influenced by the three modes of material nature. Although he's controlled, he thinks himself to be the controller. So that is the illusion. So the unconscious sleeping stage of the living entity, in which, you can consider it in many ways. In this particular instance, it's being talked about in terms of creation and dissolution. But there is also the sleeping state of the living entity, in which he is acting, but he is within a dream at the same time. That he's maybe going on with his activities within this world, in his life right now, but he is neglectful of his real position. That he may take his sambandha to be the whatever man or woman of this world, black or white, such and such, his existence to be this position. But this is also called just sleeping within this material world, that actually one hasn't recognized one's proper position in relation to the Lord. He has not awakened to the proper understanding. Therefore we have this song, Jeev Jago Gaura Chandra Bole, Kota Nidra Jao Maya Pishachira Khole. That the Lord Gauranga is calling, wake up sleeping soul, wake up sleeping souls. How long will you sleep in the lap of the witch called Maya? That having forgotten the way of devotional service and lost in this world of birth and death, I have descended just to save you. Other than myself, you have no friend in this world. I have brought the medicine that will wipe out the disease of illusion from which you are suffering. Take this Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, I fall at the Lord's feet, having taken this Maha Mantra. So there's this sleeping state of the living entity by which the Lord awakens. And similarly, there's the sleeping state of the conditioned soul within the material world, which the Lord also awakens. So we can see how the Lord, He allows the living entity to act within this world according to their different desires. and he awakens them from this sleeping slumber, and allows them to act in this world. But similarly, also the Lord awakens the living entity. The real purpose of manifesting and awakening them and allowing them to act in this world is actually to awaken their desire and their real position to perform devotional service. So the Lord allows them to perform the different acts according to their desires they have, but ultimately He wants them to awaken to this, Jeev Jago, Gaura Chandra Boli, that one should awaken and stop sleeping in the in the lap of the witch called Maya. That is real illusion. That is real sleeping, actually. To be unconscious or not give proper regard to our real position in relationship to the Supreme Lord, because that is Sambandha Tattva Gyan. And when one understands that, his natural condition of life, it's actually, this is, activity is the natural condition of life, but activities within devotional service is a real natural condition of life. That is the real position that we should have. So, and the Lord is the propagator of that, just like we're reading in regards to Devananda Pandit, that the Lord gave him great mercy in the form of the Vaishnava, that Vrakreshwara Pandit was able to come and give the message of love of Godhead to Devananda Pandit in order to awaken that. Even though Devananda Pandit was engaged in study and Bhagavatam, he could not recognize devotional service to the Lord. That is the sleeping state of the living entity. Sometimes we can have devotional service right in front of us. I mean, you've got who was it that he offended? Srivas Pandit. He offended Srivas Pandit, a great devotee of the Lord, who is the direct associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he could not recognize that. He's reading the Srimad Bhagavatam and giving discourses in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but he's not able to recognize that, although the Srimad Bhagavatam speaks about bhakti, he's not able to recognize it at all. So we cannot be expected to be awoken. We cannot expect to awake ourselves. Just like the Lord is helping awaken the living entities from this thing, similarly the Lord helps the individual living entities awaken when there is a proper desire. When there is a desire to act outside of this material conditioned life, and there's a desire to know about the absolute truth, know about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord creates facility for the living entities to come to that position. As Krishna mentions that many times, a few times throughout the Bhagavad Gita. As they surrender unto me, I shall reward them accordingly. Or I shall destroy that darkness by which become the torchlight by which they can come to me. So the more one awakens his state of consciousness, as Srila Prabhupada says, and the wakeful state of consciousness, the more one does that, the more one becomes conscious of Krishna and acts out his activities in devotional service, the further he comes to the position of his natural condition of life. So therefore the activities within devotional service, performing devotional service is so important because it allows us to act on the platform of reality in which we become more conscious, as we have seen in our own lives. The more we do devotional service, the more purified we become. The more purified we become, the more conscious we are of Krishna. The more conscious we are of Krishna, the further we can act in our avideya, in our relationship with Krishna, and in our activities to Krishna, the more further we can take our devotional service. So this natural condition of life is awoken by the Lord. Specifically speaking of the Sankirtan movement, it awakens the living entities. One is out there to awaken the living entities. Lord Chaitanya is come to awaken the conditioned living entity to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, when his desires are trained in the transcendental service to the Lord, his life becomes perfect and is promoted to the spiritual sky to enjoy eternal awakened life. So when one can actually take the proper position within devotional service, he can start to perform the activities within devotional service, which Srila Prabhupada specifically says that this nectar of instruction is specifically given by Rupa Goswami to guide our activities within devotional service, taking shelter of devotees to perform those activities, taking shelter of the acharyas to perform those activities. One comes to the platform of this eternal awakened life, in which he's never disturbed by any situation, by which his enthusiasm, his patience, his confidence, his love towards the Supreme Personality Godhead flows, just like Kunti Maharani plays that, that let all those difficulties come or whatever, let the devotional service to you flow like the rivers flow to the ocean. So when one takes to the activities of Krishna consciousness under the proper guidance of the Acaryas, then his devotional service can flow properly. But if one does not take, I was reading this Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhav, if one does not, Viruddha Ararasa Bas, Bhakti, what is that verse? That, yeah. It is not very pleasing to Lord Chaitanya when one does not act in according to its Bhakti Siddhanta. So when one takes the knowledge that the Lord and his devotee has provided and acts accordingly, not just speaks accordingly, but acts accordingly, and his thoughts are in line also, then he can be promoted to the spiritual sky, and he doesn't have to wait till the end of your life. It can be now, as Srila Prabhupada said. 1 second, 1 moment it takes to surrender to Krishna, to be awakened to our eternal life. But that is a process going on, and to come to that point of 1 moment, actually, that's all it takes. To come to that point of just 1 moment of realization. That's all it takes. Because we may perform devotional service our whole life and then not have that realization because of so many different anarthas within our heart that we are not willing to give up. But if one goes on performing devotional service with this idea of surrender and being very cautious in his progress of devotional service, one is very introspective in his performance of devotional service, seeing where he might be going wrong, taking proper advice of his seniors, then there's no doubt that moment will come in which he, all of one's life work in that moment will be fulfilled, in which it's just we've had that moment in our lives even now, where we're performing devotional service. It's very hard. We're struggling with our desires. We're having difficulties. But then it just takes 1 moment. Like, all of a sudden, everything is just removed. I don't know if devotees have had that, but it's like, all of a sudden, it just takes 1 line of Srila Prabhupada's books, or 1 word from a devotee that's like around you, or such and such. And all of a sudden, all of those difficulties just disappear, and you feel like, you're like beginning the process of devotional service. Similarly, it can be like that when we're consistently going in our lives, that it becomes that it's all this accumulation of our desire to serve the Lord. It can just be all of a sudden, okay, great. It's like you're on the platform of this eternally enjoying with the enjoy eternal awakened life. Obviously, that's not the mood, is to serve, but the idea is that you get enjoyment there. So this moment can come anytime. Actually, it's surrender to Krishna. It doesn't have to wait, but it requires the desire of the living entity. It requires the intense desire and hankering to have that loving devotion towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is manifest in how we pray to the Lord, manifest in how desirous we are to go out and work for the Lord according to how Srila Prabhupada has trained us. As Srila Prabhupada says, that Krishna is simply pleased by our efforts in preaching. And so in order to awaken this life, one has to perform those activities. And going on and on and on, pushing on, not becoming deterred in any circumstance, time, place, then the Lord is pleased and He will give us remembrance, because it is already there. Actually, our relationship with Krishna is already there. It is not something to be gained, actually, but it is something to remember. And so we can depend on the super soul for that. That is not actually done by our own endeavor also, in that sense. That when the super soul is satisfied within the heart, when Krishna is satisfied, then all of these things can come all at once. Our real position in knowledge to the Lord, our sambandha, avideya and prayojan tattva gyan, these can come. So awakening to our real life, that just like Lord, the personality of God, had entered into elements by His energy, and all the living entities are enlivened into different activities. Similarly, the Lord may He's entered within our hearts, may enliven us in order to go on with devotional service. Actually, in the Bhagavatam, there is one verse, maybe devotees, I think it's in the second canto, how the super soul is within the heart and is giving us constant inspiration even with going on in devotional service. So we can pray to the Lord like this to awaken us in engaging in our real work, which is Sankirtan, which is performing the devotional service to the Vaishnavas. So going on doing this. So I'll end my class there. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. I've got 4 minutes. Yes, bro.
Short comment. Devananda Pandit was Mayavadi.
Mayavadi.
Yes. Prabhupada says that in Chaitanya Charitamrita, 1077. Adi, 1077.
Okay.
It's in the purport.
Okay. All right. Look that up. Okay. Anything else? Any questions? No? Yeah.
I've always been confused. I think I remember coming across in Prabhupada's books that Prabhupada says that impersonalism is Mayavadi, and you also hear that in Mayavadi is impersonalism. So, like, what is the difference?
So the Mayavadis specifically try to take the position of the Lord. The impersonalists, they recognize the Lord, but they think that the impersonal realization is much higher than devotion to the Lord. So that is the difference. Where the Mayavadis are envious, the impersonalists are just misguided. So the Mayavadis purposely degrade the position of the Lord.
So Mayavadis, they can also like attain this like impersonal
they want
destination. So that the result of both, it seems like it's the same though, right? Like impersonal and Mayavadi.
He's saying not particularly.
So because that's what I'm a little confused about.
It's not. So it's particularly it's the fact that I guess the Mayavadis specifically, their idea is to become the Lord, whereas the impersonal moksha mumukshu, or one who seeks impersonal liberation, is to merge into the impersonal effulgence of the Lord. Whereas the Mayavadi's idea is that I will become God. So that's the difference.
Right. So like Mayavadis aren't able to even attain that impersonal destination. You're saying it's not possible.
It mentioned that they go down. They're although seemingly spiritual, they don't even actually go up.
Oh, okay. I see.
So here in this thing it says that being a mumukshu, or one who seeks impersonal liberation, also in this book. So, yeah.
That's what the Mayavadis think themselves are.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they're not. Right. Prabhupada mentions it twice in his purport, Adi 1077.
Mm-hmm. So is it in pastime sake that
I'll read it.
It's pastime sake that Srivas
So was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, was also Mayavadi.
but he's going to hear from
It says very clearly here. In the present town, Navadip, which was formerly known as Kulia, Lord Chaitanya showed such mercy to him that he gave up the Mayavadi interpretation of Srimad Bhagavatam and learned how to explain Srimad Bhagavatam in terms of bhakti. Formerly, when Devananda was expounding the Mayavadi interpretation, Srivas Thakur, and like this he goes away. And then Srivas Thakur was once present in the meeting and he began to cry. Devananda's students drove him away. Some days later, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu passed that way, and when he met Devananda, he chastised him severely because of his Mayavad interpretation of Srimad Bhagavatam. At that time, Devananda had little faith in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as an incarnation of Lord Krishna. But one night, sometime later, Vakreshwar Pandit was a guest in his house, and when he explained the signs of Krishna, Devananda was convinced about the identity of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
So Srivas Pandit went to listen to Devananda Pandit speak, but this is for the pastime's sake, we could say. Is that our understanding?
Srivas Pandit might have not been aware that Devananda Pandit is speaking, and he was just reciting the verses at that time. It doesn't seem like he was giving a Mayavadi interpretation, at least at the moment that Srivas Pandit was hearing it.
You have something real quick?
But just one important point, like Mayavad, there's a lot of like
Mm.
So that's like a really important point.
Yeah.
And that's like, Krishna makes that point also in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything.
Mahmud, yeah. Okay. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.